Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, the one and only, Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance version, basically based off from the Super Nintendo classic, Donkey Kong Country. So, last time, we essentially did manage able to fully complete everything in terms of the forms of Congo Jungle. Like, we did somehow manage to find every single bonus areas. In addition to that, we somehow collected every single Kong letters during the forms of 5 regular levels for the sake of the forms of Congo Jungle. So today for this video is about the fact that we'll be able to actually continue things on and move on to the next world, which appears to be Monkey Mines. And to begin with, let's go and get started with the forms of Winky's walkway, I think is what it says anyway, despite the fact that I didn't pay attention to that at all. But that's just mainly because about the fact that I just want to able to dive right into the actual level itself. So, but either way though, everything else will be pretty much expectable too. So either way, few things I want to explain for this point today, and that's what appears to be about the fact that today's date, of course, is the 10th of August today, in this case in 2023 today. And it looks like no matter what though, is about the fact that, oh, and by the way, I think this is the only bonus area we might able to actually bump into in this level, because truth be told about the fact that there's actually multiple ways you can able to get up there. Like, you can either just take a ride on Winky the Frog, or, potentially speaking, you can able to actually take a hit and jump in the process, so just in case about the fact that you could... Ah, Mr. G! Ah, dang it. That's okay though, because we got the midway point, so that should be okay for me anyway. So, anyway though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about, and relatively speaking, we only got about 10 more days to go, or potentially speaking though actually, what I was meant to say, 20 days left until specifically the third and final DLC for Mario Plus Rapid Sparks of Hope, meaning Buddy forms of Rayman in the Phantom Show, is almost getting closer to its release. So I'm still very excited about that particular expansion though, especially noticeable it's nice to be able to actually play as Rayman again after the events of Rayman Legends, or potentially speaking with Rayman Adventures on the iOS phones, or potentially speaking with mobile phones in general. And on top of that, with the forms of Rayman Mini for the Apple Arcade, and you probably name the rest of it though, so either way. And another thing is worth noting for, and that's what appears to be about the fact that apparently though, we're about to be getting the next season for Kung Fu Panda The Dragon Knight, which as a result, despite I still have not seen a series completely, that's just because about the fact that I'm pretty much used to with the actual films themselves, and especially noticeable that I'm still waiting for the 4th entry that's about to be releasing at some point until next year, so everything else will be pretty much accounted for the sake of the forms of how the next season is going to be happening, for the sake of the forms of not only for the likes of the forms of Kung Fu Panda, you know, the Dragon Knight, but also for I've heard that I Am Groot miniseries is also getting its 2nd season as well, or should I say, the next season as well. So meaning about the fact that, well, relatively speaking though, I'm not exactly sure what the 3rd season is going to be releasing for Kung Fu Panda The Dragon Knight, but let me know in the comments in the comment section down below. So, but either way though, I apologize for my commentary is a little bit iffy at this point, because I'm a little bit annoyed about the fact that, unfortunately though, my computer starts to lag during the forms of the capture footage, for the sake of the forms of this game in particular, mainly because I think the reason why that I somehow managed to able to address something about the fact that why the game just sometimes feels a bit laggy is because there's too much scrolling is going on, specifically as you can tell, for minecart carnage, as you can tell, that basically we have to jump with the minecart itself. My god, the frame rate just drops a little bit, especially noticeable because, again, I was expecting to able to try to play on the Game Boy player to make it much more of a smooth experience, but unfortunately though is about the fact that I haven't exactly touched upon my Game Boy player for some time since Super Monkey Ball Jr., so... but that might be the reason for that, so... Anywho though, so there's another explanation I should probably say about this as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, yeah, we did have a lot of announcements thanks to the forms of the Pokemon Presents presentation so far, and it looks like about the fact no matter what though, we actually did manage to see quite a few surprises here and there. Although first of all, before we get into the forms of some surprising moments, well, suffice to say, not only do we get 1, but 2 games has been recently been added for the sake of the forms of the Nintendo Switch Online subscription services, meaning by the forms of one on the Game Boy, or technically Game Boy Color, and another one which appears to be on the Nintendo 64, which, believe it or not, has actually been 4 months ago since we've last actually got the actual N64 game on the NSO expansion pack since the original Pokemon Stadium, because as it turns out, not only does Pokemon Trading Card game for the Game Boy or Game Boy Color has now finally gets its release, but also we've finally managed able to get ourselves Pokemon Stadium 2 for the Nintendo 64's Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. So yeah, that pretty much takes care of the forms of the duology games of the Pokemon Stadium series onto the actual Nintendo Switch Online services now. So meaning about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the Game Boy selections of titles, I think that pretty much takes care of it for the most part. Although I'm really hoping about that particular point they might add it in more in the future, likely also for the sake of the forms of you know, sometime for the final general Nintendo Directs before we move on to 2024, if perhaps. And especially noticeable at that particular point where I believe we've almost done with the forms of the N64 game selection so far. Like, I believe if I recall correctly, we've only got about 3 more games to go, which there are Mario Party 3, Excite Bike 64, and finally 1080 Snowboarding, and that'll be about it basically, assuming of course, much like the Game Boy selections, they might try to add it in more in the future, thanks to the forms of the pretty much the speculation for the sake of the forms of the final Nintendo general Nintendo Direct for 2023, again before we move on to 2024 basically. So either way, and as it turns out though about the fact that not only does it revealed you know, Pokemon Trading Card game for the Game Boy Color is now on the NSO surfaces and stuff like that, but also with the forms of Pokemon Stadium 2 on the N64's, you know, Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, but also about that particular point where they still mention about the forms of some mobile stuff every once in a while, with all that Pokemon Unite, and especially noticeable with the forms of Pokemon Go, and relatively speaking though, they might able to actually add it in something new, for the sake of the forms of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where basically both Mew and Mewtwo are definitely finally coming onto Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So, I believe in order to able to actually access to Mew, you need to activate a specific code until you're able to get the mystery gift. And it does have the expiry date on top of that as well, until, let's just say September 18th, for I've noticed anyway. So, yeah, I was, quite excited to see both Mew and Mewtwo are finally coming onto, you know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but it's just about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, now it's about the fact that, oh, in addition to that, it also brings us into some new trailers for the sake of the forms of some unique Pokemon animate stuff. Like, for instance, that there's going to be able to be focused around, well, we've already still managed able to realize is that Pokemon Horizons, the series, is still going to be on the way, and as a result, they still have not been confirmed the actual release date for the sake of the forms of the English dub version of the forms of Pokemon Horizons anime. So as a result, that we still have to able to wait for that for a long while, especially noticeable because it still says coming soon. So either way though, I have no idea how they still mentioning about that particular point's worth noting for. Oh, in addition to that, I think one of those series is actually going to be based off of Pokemon Trading Card or something like that, or Pokemon Trading Card game or something. Mind you, I wasn't exactly follow up to the actual Pokemon stuff as much as the next guy, but relatively speaking though, about the fact that we actually did turns out that obviously about that particular point where Pokemon Go was actually now on its 7th anniversary mark, so meaning about the fact that they were able to actually start now be added in some more Pokemon to the table, thanks to the forms of the existence of, presumably, for Generation 9 or something like that. Well, mind you about the fact that I used to play Pokemon Go in the past, but I no longer have it just because it's not my kind of thing anymore. So either way though, although for its time it's quite popular, but it's just that, well, I totally get for its popularity and stuff like that, but to me though, I just don't feel like trying to able to drain my phone's battery life, and especially noticeable, it might occasionally requires a Wi-Fi connection or something like that, or potentially speaking with the actual, like, I don't know, free Wi-Fi mobile data or something. But either way, though, chances are, though, that's all I can really say about it for the most part, so... Oh, and by the way, something worth noting for is about the fact that you're probably already wondering about the involves the Minecart Carnage level. That obviously I did somehow manage to play that level, like, twice, or complete that level twice. But that's just because about the fact that obviously that particular level, that it does not feature any bonus areas at all, similar to the forms of how it does it in Coral Capers, but also about that particular point where there's actually a warp zone featured on there. And in addition to that, it also gives me a nice little freebie camera item that we somehow obtained. So that's actually pretty swell, I might add. Especially noticeable because what makes the actual warp zones kind of interesting is that not only do you skip the entire portion of the level, but also when it comes to the forms of the transition, like for example right here, obviously about the fact that we actually see some very interesting images based off from the upcoming levels in the future, so that's actually kind of weird, honestly. So, but either way though, because chances are though, even though despite the fact that I've missed quite a lot of those bonuses around here, especially with every single, like, Kong letters here and there, so unfortunately though, I'm also able to take a death right there, so, in Stop and Go Station, so... Oh well, and there's going to be a lot of occasional moments where the forms of stupid lag decides to come into play, which I definitely need to fix that at some point, specifically until next Tuesday, because obviously about that particular point where if we get to the hardest points throughout the game, specifically when it comes to the later levels to come, my god, I definitely need to able to try to fix that stupid lag problem, because with lag included, this also is going to mess up with the defaults of my directional inputs, and especially noticeable with jump inputs, and especially noticeable with rolling inputs. So, yeah, that will be very, very annoyingly consistent whenever we do come across into a lot of lag here and there. And also, I just realized there's a camera down there. There we go, so we're now on to 13 cameras that we somehow got. Well, mind you, we're slowly trying to able to progress to able to actually obtain every single camera items here and there, and oh, that was pretty stupid of me. So, anywho, there's also another thing I should probably explain about this as well. That's what appears to be out of nowhere, that Barbie the movie has now reached to $1 billion for its box office, which is insane. Especially noticeable, despite I still have not seen the film, although for I've heard that Bubbles did somehow manage to able to see it with the girls and all that, but as a result, that she found that pretty enjoyable for what I've heard. But, relatively speaking though about the fact that I might give it a chance though, but either way though, chances are that, well, despite the fact that we've already managed able to watch some girly movies in the past, like, for instance with My Little Pony the movie because of the Brony community, and on top of that with the Powerpuff Girls movie, despite the actual movie got box office bombed during in 2002, which is a shame because obviously that will be kind of an interesting experience, but even though, as I said before, it's a shame that the Powerpuff Girls movie did somehow suffer box office bombs, and especially noticeable because the reviews didn't exactly go all that too well either. So either way, though, that might be saying something, I suppose. So, anywho though, so something's worth noting for as well is that, potentially speaking with the Barbie movie in mind, that it did somehow beat in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's box office, and on top of that, I believe what I've noticed is that Fast X did somehow stop at one point during the forms of the box office results, and so far it's actually stopped at $719 million, so a good run, but nowhere near as great as the forms of how it does it for Fast 7, mind you, because I will still say that Fast 7 is by far the best installment of the series to me though, despite there are some sad moments here and there, but either way, you probably already know what that is though, so either way, so here we go onto this particular bonus area as Winky the Frog, and as always, we need to get about roughly 600 tokens until we're able to get ourselves of, what else, another camera picture, so... But, yeah, you probably get the idea about the fact that what I was going to be saying about that earlier, so... And as far as I'm aware, is that I'm pretty certain that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was still at, 5th place right now. So as a result, it is slowly getting there for its box office numbers. But I'm thinking about that particular point where, even though it's kind of unfortunate that, you know, the sequel to that film is going to be delayed because of the forms of the writer's strike has been going on. And in addition to that, though, is about the fact that, well, oh wow, we got roughly 800 or so tokens we've got. So, relatively speaking, we can able to actually get even more extra lives. So, again, this game is very generous when it comes to giving you a lot of extra lives and all that stuff, which I always, you know, fully appreciate it for that regard. So, either way though, and that pretty much takes all the way back to this particular midway point, or specifically the checkpoint barrel. So, anyway, so let's just go through here again, apparently presumably for the third time, because I have no idea why somehow coming back in here again. Well, that's just because about the fact I just want to play it safe, so just in case I don't want to let the actual lag keep on messing up with my movements and stuff like that. And also about the fact that ever since in Congo Jungle, that we've already managed able to complete every level as Donkey Kong, then obviously about the fact that we've somehow managed to get another one of those pictures in mind. So we figure I'm also able to give Diddy Kong a chance this time, so relatively speaking, I think this will be the final time for doing this process right here, especially considering about that particular point for its, you know, entire completion in mind. So, anyway though, yeah, I suppose that's about it basically. Even though, mind you, for Operama, I think that's what it says anyway, almost barely catches up to the actual, like, the top 5 box office records for 2023 right now. Although, mind you, to be fair though, I think I will still say that it will beat up the forms of the Little Mermaid live-action movie box office department, because obviously for that particular point where... Oh, and speaking of such though, someone said in the comments down below, for the past few days or so, they did somehow, well, he did somehow mention something related to the fact that, unfortunately though, the live-action version of The Little Mermaid is definitely coming onto Disney Plus until, the 6th of September. And let me tell you, I'm not gonna go for that, especially noticeable. I'm hoping that both Dr. Eggman or Bowser, or even especially noticeable if Dr. Neo Cortex won't able to actually force me to able to watch that particular abomination of this mankind, because let me tell you, I'm still definitely not going to see that after that particular lackluster and disappointing aspect about the films of the Pinocchio live-action movie since last year. I mean, good God, what were they thinking? In fact, kind of thinking about it, from what I've noticed, I found it's kind of hilarious, even though despite the fact that it can be depressing at points. But basically though, the Disney live-action movies are basically like the equivalent to, let's just say, X-Parasites from the Metroid series, which I honestly agree, especially noticeable because they ruined the actual nostalgia factor, and on top of that, it just makes everything else 10 times worse. So either way though, I can probably able to actually expect to see how this is going to turn out to be. So, I'm not exactly sure what the comments user's name was, but I'm sure enough though, I definitely more likely heard about the forms of the X-Parasites, because after all, we've already did tackle the forms of Metroid Fusion back in during the forms of you know what I mean, back in May this year, so... Anyways, as you can see, we're going into the forms of Funky's fishing minigame again, except this time we now need to catch those octopuses, and as a result, you got to ignore that wine empty bottles, because if you dare manage to catch the actual bottles, it actually depletes your time. So, relatively speaking, this one's not too bad, but the last one, on the other hand, is actually way more harder than it seems, especially noticeable until the later stages to come, obviously about the fact that the difficulty might start to ramp up, even especially noticeable with the timer might actually decreases a lot faster than you thought it was. So, but either way, though, you'll see why until when it gets to the point until likely also for every, like, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays for its uploading schedule department. So, yeah, you probably expect how this is going to turn out. So, anywho though, there's also another thing I should probably explain about this as well. Sadly to tell you, is that WrestleQuest did somehow got delayed until August the 22nd, which, to be fair, is not too far ahead. So, however though, unlike the other game though, which is of course 30XX, which is basically sort of like a spiritual successor to those 8-bit Mega Man games. Basically though, that game is going to be delayed during, let's just say on the Switch version most likely. So because of that though, yeah, because it was originally going to be released at some point on the 8th of August, but now it's no longer existence. So as a result, yeah, that particular version got delayed. So, alright, Millstone Mayhem. So either way though, and I think if I recall correctly, there's a first bonus area just right up here. Yeah, because I've somehow managed to already recognize where that particular bonus location was, so... And I realized I missed out the actual K letter right there, because I need to be able to hit back for it, so... Oh yeah, something worth noting for as well, and that's what appears to be about that particular point where I think I somehow managed to able to get myself Rosalina swimwear character unlocked now. So as a result about that particular point, I was gonna able to try to save up for Wendy Me Racing suit, but I don't seem to be bothered about it. Especially noticeable because considering about that particular point where sometimes I always attempt to go after some Me Racing suits, but other times though not. Because especially noticeable that particular point where, you know what I'm saying about that particular point, I always prefer unlockable characters more, just because of all that, you know, different style of fashion, and especially noticeable in some cases though, special items you can able to obtain, depending on what specific outfit version of certain characters you do pick. So, oh, in addition to that though, is about the fact that, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that Green Bodo is locked out behind the stupid tier system, which, so far, it's not that very good, especially noticeable, because I will have to admit it though right away, I do appreciate that I somehow finally managed to get myself Yellow Yoshi, because as a result, that because of, you know, somehow it's all depending on luck, and especially noticeable, it doesn't help that sometimes the frenzy system tend to screw me up a lot of times, so that's the way I think about it anyway, so... Anyway, so if I recall correctly, for this level right here, it does contain 3 bonus areas, for what I've noticed. And I somehow screwed up on this particular bonus area, but that's okay, because we somehow find it, so... Well, I suppose the only rewards you do get in mind is just extra lives, and that's it, so... Now I think something tells me with this TNT barrel might have something to do with the 3rd and final bonus area, which I think, if I recall correctly, I did somehow got screwed right there, so... Well, at least potentially speaking now about the fact that hopefully we're able to try this again, assuming of course that thankfully we've got the midway point, so that should be all pretty swell. So, anywho though, oh yeah, there's also another thing I would like to mention about this, and that's what appears to be about the fact that I can't even believe by saying this, is that since about roughly 2 days ago, it's been 8 years, no. It's been like 9 years ago since when Five Nights at Freddy's game did first came out on PC Steam, which as a result, yeah, time flies, you know, especially considering about that particular point where obviously the franchise might start to get a lot more popular now, thanks to forms of some merchandising, and especially noticeable they're about to be making a movie this year, and on top of all that stuff though, with a lot of memes, as well as a lot of green screen editing, and on top of all that stuff though, how interesting that experience was. So, unfortunately I've missed the end right there, because I think something tells me I somehow skipped the bottom portion of that particular segment, so... sometimes hunting for some other things can be felt a bit time-consuming, but at least on the upside is though, is about the fact that although, unlike in Donkey Kong Country Returns, that basically if you do manage to obtain every single Kong letters in one of those levels in particular, well, if you do collected all of them, thankfully you can able to keep them for good if you keep dying. So because of that though, that actually signifies you can able to actually accomplish that, whilst unlike in Donkey Kong Country Returns, and same applies with Tropical Freeze as well, you need to recollect them again. So yeah, that might be a little bit of a nuisance if you're trying to tackle through some hardest aspects throughout the game so far, so... But at the very least, we did finally manage to find the N letter, so that should be all pretty swell. So, there's also another thing I should probably explain about this too, and that's what appears to be that apparently though, they're about to be able to doing a massive crossover episode based off from Teen Titans Go. And as a result, it's going to be based off from the massive Cartoon Network crossover, so I'm curious to check it out, but I highly doubt I don't know if I can able to see it on day one. That's just because I'm not a big fan of the actual reboot version of Teen Titans, like Teen Titans Go, because I can totally see why a lot of fans of Teen Titans got ticked off by that. And on top of all that stuff though, one thing I should probably also mention is that it's been 10 years ago since Planes first came out on the big screen, which is basically like a Cars spin-off movie, which as a result, you know, while looking back on it though, never watched it. Especially noticeable, it's not my cup of tea. Especially noticeable because thanks to the Forms of Monsters University, did somehow manage to able to got my interest back in during the Forms of in 2013, that is. In addition to that though, is about the fact that I have no reason to able to actually see that movie, because obviously while looking back on it though, it's just weird. It's so weird. So, anyways, at the very least though, as you can tell, we finally managed to find the third and final bonus area, despite the fact that I'm not very great at this, just because of all that specific frames for that one-up balloons locations. But apart from those side of things though, that's what I can really say about this, I guess. Oh, and I think there's also another thing I could probably discuss upon, and that's what appears to be about the fact that there was actually that particular interview saying about the fact that, suffice to say, I don't think Shadow's going to appear in Sonic Superstars, mainly because about the fact that trying to able to make him in a classic model felt a bit too weird. So as a result, I could possibly understand it. So either way though, plus it takes place on somewhat almost in a classic continuity. So as a result that, yeah, I don't think Shadow's gonna be in the Sonic Superstars, I don't think. So, understandably so, but that's okay. Because after all, about the fact that we can able to experience 4 playable characters in Sonic Superstars, which is always a pretty swell experience. So, but either way though, yeah, that's what I can really say about that. And another thing I should probably also explain about this as well, is that potentially speaking out of nowhere, during the course of Among Us, they did somehow manage to able to receive the actual special events update, which appears to be What the Golf, which basically means is Among Golf, which as a result, I've never actually heard about that before, but I'm curious to able to see what that particular thing plays like. Although mind you, I haven't exactly experienced Among Us for myself, so but I definitely heard a lot of popularity things is going on at the moment with all that. You know what I mean, continuous merchandising, and especially noticeable with some collaborations here and there from time to time. And on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that it requires a lot of mystery involved, for what I've heard about it anyway, so... Anyways, let's meet up with Candy Kong again, and we can able to do the next dance routine, and thankfully we don't need to worry about trying to get a perfection run again, because obviously we've already tackled that, since on the very first world, during the Forms of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance. So, even though despite the fact that my directional inputs sometimes wasn't exactly the most accurate, so... But then again, I apologize if my commentary is a little bit wishy-washy for this point today, but that's just because about the fact that at this point in time, the weather condition right now is actually not too shabby today. Although mind you about the fact that, well, unfortunately though, every once in a while, that we will sometimes occasionally go into the point where sometimes we keep on hearing the forms of rainy weather conditions, which is too boring for my liking, especially noticeable in still in summer of course. But either way though, that might be saying something I guess. So, anyways though, so let's go ahead and move on to the next boss in Donkey Kong Country. And that's what appears to be, well, Neki. So in some cases, Neki's nuts. So, obviously you need to wait until when he finishes that attack, as you can see, because every once in a while he's turning red at one point, and eventually he'll start able to go into his normal color scheme, and that's how essentially how you can deal with him. So, basically a relatively easy fight, although there's also equivalents to this at some point later down the road, which might actually brings us to the point where we'll get into the hardest boss fights in the game for some players out there. So anyways, let's go ahead and knock him out, and there he goes. And that pretty much takes care of everything for Monkey Minds. And on top of that, since that we've already completely done with every single stages in Monkey Mines as Diddy Kong, we could expect that we were able to actually get ourselves the next camera picture that we can able to obtain. So, but in order able to do that, on the other hand, I think something tells me we need to able to head back into the forms of Monkey Mines, and then you're able to actually get that particular photo. So that's something worth noting for. So, oh wow, we're actually on 29% done. So we're barely getting there. But relatively speaking, though, we did somehow come across into 5 levels, just like in Congo Jungle. So eventually, in some other levels, might get it felt a bit lengthy every once in a while. But either way, though, I'm sure we're able to try to get used to with the actual, you know what I'm saying, the level's length and stuff like that. So yeah, as you can tell, I was expecting if I was trying to get the picture of Diddy Kong on there, but chances are I have to go back into the forms of Monkey Mines in order able to actually access to it. So yeah, that's something worth noting for. So anywho though, and I suppose the final thing I should probably explain about this, and that's what appears to be about the fact that I love the fact that for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, for its poster, for the sake of the forms of that particular, the thing itself, is almost like a nice little throwback to the forms of pays homage to the forms of the original 90s movie. So yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. So either way, I think, suffice to say, I think that's as far as I can talk about. For the sake of the forms of this video anyway. I could possibly explain about the forms of some more Pokemon stuff during the forms of today, but I think, suffice to say, I think I should probably discuss more details onto that topic at some point once I go back onto Super Mario RPG for the sake of the forms of this week. So like, specifically this weekend. So again, I apologize for my comment take is a little bit wishy-washy today, but either way, I promise you guys, once I go into Super Mario RPG, that I can probably discuss upon a lot of things. So anyway though, so with that being said, I think we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance. Basically, we can now able to hop into the third world, which appears to be Vine Valley. So, oh boy, I'm very curious to know how that particular version is going to play out to be. So, but either way, I'll see you guys until next Tuesday. So, yeah, later fellas.